In the gospel reading today, we hear the scribes and Pharisees coming to our Lord and seeking a sign. No different from where we're at today, is it? People want signs, people want wonders, people want all kinds of extraordinary things. But when we listen to what our Lord told the people, talked about what happened with Nineveh and how they repented at the preaching of Jonah. There's someone greater than Jonah here. The Queen of the South will arise, and she listened to the wisdom of Solomon, and there's one greater than Solomon here. Now we all acknowledge that. We recognize that Jesus is present. We know that he is God. And yet we continue to test him. Why? We want a sign. Let me translate that for you. I don't believe. Unless you prove something to me, I'm not going to believe it. I know the church teaches that Jesus is God, but I don't believe that unless you prove it to me. And what does he need to do to prove it to you? What kind of sign are you looking for? What can be greater than the crucifixion and the resurrection? There is no sign that comes even remotely close to that. And yet we'll look at that and go, oh, yeah, I know, that was 2,000 years ago. I mean, we need something now. How many signs do you need? All you have to do is look at what happens in your day-to-day life. There are hundreds of them every day. But of course, those aren't the ones we're looking for, so we can ignore those too. In other words, what needs to happen? There is no sign that is going to be sufficient if we don't want to believe. And the other side of that is true as well. If we believe, we don't need a sign. We know that our Lord is right here with us. We don't need him to prove anything. If anyone needs to prove anything, it's us. We have to prove that we're faithful. We have to prove that we really believe. Isn't it interesting how in our humanness we project all the stuff onto everybody else? Somehow God has to prove that he's real. God has to prove that he's faithful. God has to prove that he's trustworthy. Sorry, God has proved it. I haven't. All I've proven is that I'm sinful. All that I've proven is that I'm not trustworthy. All that I've proven is that I don't have faith that I should. But of course, rather than acknowledging that, I want to project it all onto God. He needs to prove himself. No. We need to prove ourselves. And that, again, is the beauty of the situation that we're living in right now. It's a disaster. How can that be good? Because it gives us a chance to prove ourselves. As we know, there's going to be this clear separation. There will be no middle ground. So which way are we going to choose? If we're looking for a sign of some sort, then we're going to become just like the Israelites. They had all these signs. They saw the 10 plagues in Egypt. They just saw the angel of death pass over. They're walking out, and then what do? Better that we be slaves than to be out here in the desert. They had no trust in God. They saw the Egyptians coming in battle array, and they thought they were all going to die. And they would rather live as slaves than die as free people. How pathetic. All the signs that they saw, what good did it do them? Zero. They didn't have faith. All the signs aren't going to give us faith. The signs prove things regarding God, and we have lots of them. They're all over the scriptures. They're all over the 2,000-year history of the church, and they are all over the history of your life. But we need to go deeper than signs, because the sign is here for a minute and then it's gone. The faith has to remain. So we have to go deeper than that. Otherwise, when things get difficult, they're a mess right now, but it hasn't gotten that difficult yet. When things get difficult, we're going to go, oh, better that we would have been as slaves. Really? You want to continue in this trash? You don't want to see the triumph of the Immaculate Heart? You want to continue living as a slave in this world? Because I have my McDonald's and I have my video games. I've got everything I need. We have Jesus. We don't need the other nonsense. We need to be free. That's what he created us for. And we would rather be slaves than to be free. How pathetic. But oh no, it's not about us. God has to prove himself. I've got it all under control. Right. We are out of control. The world is out of control. We need to recognize what God is calling us to and the great privilege that is ours. Right now, we are just about in the same place as those Israelites were when they were working as slaves in Egypt, and God was appearing to Moses and telling him what needed to happen. We're just on the cusp of being able to be set free, which means we are just on the cusp of being able to prove our faithfulness and our trust in God. Do we really believe him? Do we really trust him? That is going to be the important question. He doesn't need to prove anything. We do. This is Our Lady's time. She has demonstrated herself. She doesn't need to prove anything. We're going to see some pretty extraordinary things. Don't worry about that. But that's not the issue. The issue is us. Are we going to be faithful? Are we going to be trustworthy? This is our time now to prove ourselves. God doesn't need to prove anything. Our Blessed Lady doesn't need to prove anything. They already have. So maybe God is looking at us and saying, I want to see a sign. I want to see a sign that you're actually going to be faithful. I want to see a sign that you really trust me. Isn't it interesting when the table gets turned and the panic that goes through us? That's where we're at. What a blessing. What a gift. Now it's our turn. Stand up and prove yourself faithful. Demonstrate yourself to be trustworthy, because God has already proven himself to be both faithful and trustworthy.